Let's jump into a topic that I think is on every marketer's mind: how to get the best deals when you're working with suppliers and agencies.
Absolutely. It's all about getting that value, right? But also building those strong relationships that are so crucial in this industry.
Yeah, for sure. And we're really lucky today to have this awesome article from Procure for Marketing as our guide. It's called How to Negotiate with Suppliers and Agencies. And it's got some pretty great insights.
It really does. And it starts by addressing something that I think a lot of us are guilty of,
Yeah.
not prepping enough before we even start
Oh,
negotiating.
yeah, big time. I know, I've definitely been there. So what are we doing wrong? How can we up our prep game?
Well, think about it this way. You wouldn't walk into a pitch to a potential client without doing your homework, right?
Right.
Knowing your business inside and out, their target audience, their goals.
Totally. You'd get laughed out of the room.
Exactly. Well, the same goes for negotiating with suppliers. You need to understand their offerings, your needs, and what the market looks like. It's all about knowledge.
So where do we even start? What kind of homework should we be doing?
Knowing your objectives is absolutely crucial. First, what are your non-negotiables? Those things you absolutely cannot budge on. For example, maybe you absolutely need an agency with experience in a specific social media platform, or a supplier who can deliver materials within a tight time frame.
Okay, so those are the must-haves. Got it.
Right. But then you also need to think about where there might be room for flexibility. Perhaps you're open to different pricing models or willing to adjust your timeline if it means getting the right partner.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like going into a grocery store with a list. You know what you need, but you're also open to seeing what's on sale or trying something new if it fits your budget.
Exactly. And that's where market research comes in. Are you looking for industry standard pricing, or are you willing to pay a premium for exceptional service or specialized expertise?
Right. You don't want to undersell yourself, but you also need to be realistic about what the market will bear.
Exactly. And beyond just knowing your own needs, the article encourages us to try and understand our supplier's perspective. What might their goals be in this negotiation? What challenges might they be facing?
It's like trying to figure out the other side of the chessboard, anticipating their next move. I like it.
It can be incredibly insightful. For instance, let's say you're negotiating with a small boutique agency. They might be more flexible on price if you can offer them something in return, maybe a longer contract or the chance to work on a high-profile project that could boost their portfolio.
So it's about finding that sweet spot where both sides feel like they're getting something valuable out of the deal. It's not just about who can drive the hardest bargain.
Precisely. And once you've laid that groundwork of understanding, the next step is all about communication.
Which makes sense because you can have the best strategy in the world, but if you can't communicate it effectively, it's all for nothing.
Exactly. And the article delves into the nuances of communication, emphasizing that it's not just about what you say, but how you say it.
Okay, so beyond just being clear and concise, what are some communication strategies that can really elevate a negotiation?
Active listening. It's crucial. When the supplier is speaking, are you genuinely engaged, or are you just waiting for your turn to talk? Taking the time to understand their perspective helps build rapport and can reveal valuable information that might not be explicitly stated.
Right. So reading between the lines, it's like being a detective looking for clues.
And don't underestimate the power of visual aids. If you're negotiating a complex project, having charts, graphs, or even mock-ups can make your points much clearer and make sure everyone's literally on the same page.
Yeah, especially when you're dealing with different learning styles. Some people are very visual, others are more auditory. Having something to look at can make a big difference.
Absolutely. And speaking of clarity, don't be afraid to ask questions and confirm understanding. There's nothing worse than assuming you're both on the same page, only to discover later that you had completely different interpretations.
Oh, I've been there. It's a recipe for disaster.
Ugh.
So it's better to over-communicate than under-communicate, right?
Exactly. Remember, clarity breeds trust. And that's essential when you're building a strong foundation for a successful partnership. Which brings us to the big question, the price tag.
Okay, let's talk money. Because at the end of the day, negotiation is about getting the best possible price, right?
Well, yes and no. The article cautions against fixating on price alone.
Wait, hold on. Are you saying price isn't the most important factor? What else is there?
It's about the total value you're getting. Would you rather pay a slightly higher price for a supplier who consistently delivers high-quality work on time, or go with the cheapest option and risk delays, errors, and potentially having to redo the entire project?
Okay, yeah. You're making me rethink my priorities a little bit. But how do you actually determine that total value? It seems a little bit subjective.
It's about looking beyond the deliverables. Does the supplier have a proven track record of success in your industry? Do they offer value-added services like strategic consulting, data analysis, or ongoing support? These factors can significantly impact the overall return on your investment, even if that initial price tag is a bit higher.
So give us an example, something concrete.
Let's say you're looking for a social media marketing agency. One agency quotes you a lower price, but they only offer basic content creation services. But they bring deep expertise in data analytics, they offer customized reporting, and they have a dedicated account manager who will be your point of contact throughout the project. Which one offers more value in the long run?
Oh, okay, I see your point. Suddenly that higher price tag doesn't seem so bad when you consider all the extra expertise and support you're getting.
It's all about perspective. It's about understanding what truly matters to you and your business goals and finding a supplier who can deliver on those needs, even if it means adjusting your budget a bit. And that brings us to another crucial element, the contract itself.
Oh, the contract. Honestly, I usually just skim those things and sign on the dotted line. Is that bad?
It can be. The contract isn't just a formality, it's the roadmap for your entire relationship with the supplier. It outlines expectations, responsibilities, and of course, the legal terms of your agreement.
All right, I'm starting to sweat a little. What should we be looking out for?
Well, first, think of the contract as a safety net. It protects both you and the supplier if something goes wrong. So understanding those details is super important. And beyond the basic terms like price and payment schedule, there are a few key areas you should really scrutinize. For instance, service level agreements or SLAs.
SLAs. I've heard of those. They always seem like something only huge corporations worried about.
Not at all. They're important for any business, no matter the size. SLAs essentially guarantee a certain level of service from the supplier. For example, let's say your website crashes and you're losing potential customers every minute. An SLA with your web hosting provider would guarantee a specific response time, so you know they'll jump on the problem immediately and get your site back up and running as quickly as possible.
Okay, yeah. That makes a lot of sense. It's like having insurance for your business operations. You hope you never need it, but it's there to protect you if disaster strikes.
Exactly. And another thing to consider is flexibility in delivery timelines. The marketing world changes so quickly, so having some wiggle room in that contract can really help you adjust to unexpected circumstances.
Right. Like if a campaign needs to pivot based on a sudden shift in consumer behavior or a new social media platform pops up out of nowhere, you don't want to be locked into a rigid plan that's no longer relevant.
Exactly. Having that flexibility built in can save you a lot of headaches and potentially a lot of money down the road.
This is fantastic. I'm already feeling so much more confident about tackling those contract negotiations. But what about after the contract is signed? How do we take all of this and actually build those long-term relationships we talked about at the beginning?
That's where the real magic happens, and that's what we'll explore in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay, so we've talked about prepping for negotiations and making sure those contracts are rock solid. But what I'm really excited to dig into is how all of this actually translates into building those lasting relationships with our marketing suppliers and agencies.
I agree. That's where the real payoff is, isn't it? And the article really drives home that point. Negotiation isn't just about the immediate deal, it's the foundation for a strong, long-term partnership.
Which makes sense. But I think the challenge for a lot of us is making that mental shift. It's easy to get so caught up in the back and forth, the give and take of negotiation that you kind of forget you're actually trying to build something together.
You're so right. It's like we get tunnel vision. But one of the simplest yet most effective ways to change that is to approach negotiations with what the article calls a win-win mentality.
Okay, I like that, win-win. But what does that look like in practice?
Well, it means not thinking of it as one side winning at the expense of the other. It's about finding a solution that truly benefits both parties.
I can get behind that.
Yeah.
But sometimes, let's be honest, it can feel like a battle, especially when budgets are tight. How do you keep things collaborative and prevent it from turning into a tug of war?
You've hit on a key point. It all boils down to fairness and respect. Remember, you're going to be working with these people, so starting the relationship off on the right foot is crucial. Treat your suppliers with the same courtesy and consideration that you'd expect from them.
So it's like any other relationship. It's built on mutual respect and open communication. Which, speaking of communication, I'm curious about how transparency plays into all of this.
Transparency is absolutely essential. Being upfront about your needs, your expectations, and even your limitations builds trust and encourages the supplier to do the same.
Yeah, it's like that saying, sunlight is the best disinfectant. The more open you are, the less chance there is for those nasty surprises and misunderstandings down the line.
Exactly. And when you've established that foundation of transparency, then consistency and reliability become key. Be someone your suppliers can count on.
So follow through on commitments, make payments on time, and provide them with the information they need when they need it. Basically, be a good partner.
Exactly. And you know what? When suppliers know they can rely on you, they're more likely to go that extra mile. They're more likely to deliver exceptional service. It's a win-win for everyone.
I love that. But let's be real. Not everything always goes according to plan. What happens when those inevitable bumps in the road arise? How do you handle those situations without damaging the relationship?
Those moments can actually be opportunities to strengthen the partnership. Right. Yes. The article emphasizes the importance of collaborative problem solving. When an issue arises, instead of pointing fingers, work together to find a solution.
So it's more about saying, okay, how do we fix this together rather than you messed up?
Exactly. It shows that you're both committed to the partnership and that you're willing to work through challenges as a team.
It's definitely a much more constructive approach. It takes the pressure off and creates a more positive, solution-oriented environment.
Now, what about regular check-ins and feedback? Are those important for maintaining a good relationship?
They're super important. And it's not about micromanaging. It's about staying connected, making sure everyone's on the same page, and providing constructive feedback. And remember, this goes both ways.
Oh, right. So you're getting updates from the supplier, but you're also giving them feedback on what's working well and what could be improved. It's like a continuous loop of communication. Exactly. And when both sides feel heard and valued, they're much more likely to go the extra mile to make that partnership successful. And speaking of valuing contributions, don't forget the importance of recognition and appreciation.
Oh, that's so important. It's so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day grind and
Yeah.
forget to just acknowledge the good work that people are doing. So what are some good ways to show appreciation to your suppliers?
It doesn't have to be anything grand. A simple thank you note, a positive review on their website, or even just a shout out during a team meeting can go a long way in boosting morale and reinforcing those positive behaviors.
Yeah, it's those little things that often make the biggest difference. It shows that you're paying attention and that you genuinely value their efforts. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in terms of building those solid long-term relationships. But let's face it, not every conversation is going to be sunshine and roses. How do we handle those inevitable, difficult conversations that pop up in any business relationship?
That's where your emotional intelligence really comes into play. And the article highlights a few really great strategies for navigating those tricky situations.
Oh, yes. The dreaded, difficult conversation. We've all been there. What are some things we can do to prepare ourselves mentally and emotionally for those conversations?
It might sound simple, but one of the most important things is to stay calm. No matter how heated the discussion gets, maintain your professionalism.
I know, easier said than done, right?
Right.
Especially when you're dealing with a challenging personality or a particularly complex issue.
It can be tough, I know. But remember, losing your cool is only going to escalate the situation and make it harder to find a solution that works for both of you. So take a deep breath, count to 10, and remind yourself, it's a business discussion, not a personal attack.
Good advice. It's so easy to get caught up in the moment and take things personally, especially when you're passionate about your work. But keeping those emotions in check is so important for having a productive conversation. Now, what about active listening? Does that play a role in difficult conversations?
Active listening is absolutely crucial. In fact, it might be more important in a difficult negotiation than in a smooth one. Really try to understand the other party's perspective, even if you don't agree with it.
So put yourself in their shoes, even if it's tough.
Exactly. Active listening can help de-escalate tensions and often uncover those underlying issues that might be driving the conflict. And once both sides feel heard and understood, it becomes a lot easier to find a path forward.
Sometimes just feeling heard and understood can go a long way in diffusing a tense situation, right?
Yeah.
It allows you to move beyond those initial positions and start to actually explore potential solutions. So are there any other techniques for finding common ground in these situations?
Absolutely. One thing that's really helpful is to look for areas of agreement, no matter how small they might seem. Even just a sliver of shared understanding can be a starting point for building a more comprehensive solution.
It's like you're building a bridge. You start with those small steps, those initial points of connection, and gradually work your way toward a more robust solution.
What about bringing in those objective criteria we talked about earlier? Would that be helpful in a difficult conversation?
Absolutely. Whenever possible, try to base the negotiation on things like market standards, industry benchmarks, or even legal requirements.
So you're taking the emotion out of it and relying on facts and data. Like, okay, let's look at the facts and make a decision based on what's reasonable.
Right, and that can really help move the conversation away from those subjective opinions and toward a more neutral, rational approach.
I like that a lot. It helps to keep things grounded and prevents those emotional outbursts that can derail a negotiation. But what if, despite your best efforts, you just can't seem to reach an agreement? What happens when you hit that dreaded stalemate?
That's when you might want to consider bringing in a mediator.
A mediator, so like a neutral third party who can help facilitate the conversation and find a solution that works for everyone. Exactly. A skilled mediator can be incredibly helpful. They can break down those communication barriers, identify areas of compromise, and guide both parties toward a mutually acceptable resolution.
That's a good option to have in your back pocket if things get really tough.
Mm.
But what if, even with mediation, you still can't reach an agreement? What then?
Then you need to know your limits. The article really stresses the importance of being prepared to walk away from a negotiation if the terms are simply unacceptable.
So knowing your bottom line and sticking to it, even if it means walking away from the deal. But isn't that a little risky? What if you can't find another supplier who meets your needs?
It's definitely a judgment call, but sometimes walking away is the best option, even if it's disappointing in the short term. And often the act of walking away can actually lead to a more favorable outcome.
Oh, really? How so?
Sometimes when a supplier sees that you're serious about your limits and that you're truly willing to walk away, they might reconsider their position and offer you better terms. It's a way of demonstrating your strength and your resolve.
Interesting, like you're calling their bluff a little bit.
In a way, yes. Okay, so let's say you've successfully navigated the negotiation, you've reached an agreement that everyone feels good about. What are some things you can do to make that transition into the implementation phase as smooth as possible?
That's a great question. I'm all about avoiding those post-negotiation hiccups.
One of the best things you can do is simply follow up after the negotiation with a clear summary of the key points and next steps. This helps to solidify the agreement and prevent any misunderstandings from cropping up later on.
So putting it all in writing, making sure everyone's on the same page.
Exactly. It's a simple step, but it can make a world of difference.
This has been fantastic. So insightful. It's clear that negotiation is a complex skill. But with the right approach, it can be such a powerful tool for building those strategic partnerships that drive success in marketing.
Absolutely. And the more you do it, the more confident and effective you'll become. It's all about practice.
I love that. So we've talked about prep work communication, those tricky power dynamics, and even how to handle those tough conversations that can sometimes pop up. What else do we need to know to become true masters of negotiation? As we've been going through all this, I keep coming back to one thing.
Oh, I'm curious. What's that?
It's that human element to all of this. Like, we talk about negotiation being strategic, really, all about the planning and the tactics. But really, it seems like emotional intelligence is just as important, if not more so.
I think you've hit the nail on the head. Being able to read people, understand their motivations, and then respond with empathy. Those are some serious superpowers when it comes to negotiation, especially those tough ones.
It makes you wonder if maybe instead of focusing so much on winning, we should be focusing more on connecting with the other person, understanding their needs, and finding solutions that actually work for everyone involved.
I love that shift in perspective, because maybe the most successful negotiators aren't the ones who are the toughest, but the ones who are the most human, the ones who can build that genuine connection.
And that brings us right back to what we were discussing earlier about building those long-term relationships with suppliers. It's not about playing hardball. It's about building trust and mutual respect.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we're all in this together, and that by working collaboratively, we can achieve so much more than we could by trying to outsmart or overpower each other.
Okay, so I think we've come full circle here. We started by talking about all that prep work and strategy, and we've ended by recognizing that empathy, communication, that human connection, those are really the keys to successful negotiation.
It's a great reminder that business, at the end of the day, is all about people.
Absolutely. And I think that's the perfect note to end on. So to our listeners out there, remember that negotiation is a skill that you can hone and develop with practice. Don't be afraid to Try new things,
Mm.
step outside your comfort zone, and always strive to create win-win situations.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And remember, a little empathy and a willingness to see things from the other person's perspective goes a long way.
Couldn't agree more. It's easy to get caught up in the details,
Mm.
the numbers, the deadlines. But at the end of the day, we're all human beings just trying to do our best.
Well said. And I think we've given our listeners a lot to think about today.
I hope so. Negotiation's a journey, not a destination, right?
Mm.
The more you practice, the more confident you'll become. So keep honing those skills, and remember, the best deals are the ones where everyone walks away feeling good about the outcome.
Truth.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of negotiation. We'll catch you next time for another fascinating exploration.